What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Hopefully everyone is having a wonderful Wednesday today. No real topic today. Figured we just do some random Q&A. So if you guys got anything you want to dig into today, let me know and we will definitely dig into it. Happy Wednesday. The Lucent Fish, Bill Saltwater Haven, Brent Johnson. What's going on, guys? Eric Rad, welcome. Have you seen the new Parwise meter from ITC? Bought one and tore it up the same day. I have not. Actually, maybe I have. I did see some new Parwise meter. I didn't actually pay attention to who it was. Let me look that up quickly and see if that's the same one. Parwise, yeah, that looks like it. I have not. I have a Senna, and that's, or not the Senna. What is it? Apogee. What's going on, Randy? So I have this guy, which is the Apogee MQ510, which is kind of been my go-to one. So I've had this one for years, and it's been a great parameter. Salty Farms, welcome. That one's a little more expensive, but just because I do a lot of videos and stuff, I want something that was reasonably accurate and pretty well dialed in. So that one's been good for it. What's happening, Sid? What angelfish do you have? I have a Coral Beauty. I kind of want a flame angel again. I had one in the past, but it was nipping at a lot of my corals, so I did sell that one. I am tempted to get one again, so we'll see. What's going on, Ryan? Welcome. Crying baby. Don't think it's the bedtime. Yeah, mine's having a nap right now. It's all about the timing. Have you gotten different levels from Kalkwasser from day to day, or is it always consistent? I do not have a pH probe in my current Kalkwasser reactor. One of my prior ones, I did have an electrical conductivity probe inside of it, and it will slowly drop over time, so it will slowly lose potency. Generally what I do, like once a week, I'll put like a quarter scoop type of thing into my reactor just to kind of like freshen things up, and that kind of keeps it fairly consistent. There's probably a little one, but I don't think it's massive. The one that measures spectrum too, but the par numbers are crazy high. I saw someone's post that wasn't super duper accurate, or the graphs were kind of like estimated, not actual. I don't know. Haven't dug into that one yet. What's going on, Manny? It is... You got them all wrong, Manny. Keep guessing. It's D-E-V-E-N. Ham corals. Do you get new fish to eat? Oh, how do you get new fish to eat? I was like, I don't want to eat my pets. Honestly, one of the main things I go with for is generally mysis. PE mysis, that's the one I use, that's local to me. But mysis shrimp, I find almost everything eats it. Pellets are always hit and miss. I hear some people have success with mastic. But for me, frozen mysis seems to be the thing that almost every fish will go for, so that's kind of my go-to. Chris Colt, thanks for all the videos. You're welcome. Thanks for watching them. What's going on, Than? Good evening. I just got a bicolor angel currently holding tank. Very nice. Lavender tagging this week. He's doing awesome. Very nice. I don't know. I might do another dwarf angel in here, but I'm also thinking of going heavier on the LPS in that tank. So depends if they're going to be nippers. It's always that risk, but I do like the flame angels. I think they're super cool. Any thoughts on PNS Pro Bio? Are those the little vials that you crack? Oh no, that one. Okay, PNS Pro Bio. I have not used that one, so I cannot comment on it. But it's a good question. Now the ITC thing I am looking at now, I am curious to know how accurate the spectrographs are. That is one thing I always kind of curious about. I don't know. If it's super accurate, it'd be interesting, but if you guys have one, let me know how it is. I'd be super curious to find out. I've honestly haven't worried too much about spectrum as much, because I know like the lights that I use have a pretty solid spectrum, so I mainly just worry about the par numbers. Pjort, how do you like the AI blades? I think the blades are awesome. I have the two blues on here right now. I do have the one grow, but that one I just have it kind of hang out to the side for now. The glows are the main ones that I'm using. So I got 4 XR15 Pros on here right now, and I have a glow on either side of it, and they work really nice just kind of for fill light. I did not take the AIs off my tank because you can see them right here. They're super thin though, so if you look at them, they almost disappear. That's how thin they are, but they are most definitely still in the tank. But they're super duper low profile. Yeah, exactly. So clean. So one of the reasons I love these is look how thin they are. insanely thin. Now, yes, I do have a smidge of sag through it, but I'm also should not really be end mounting these. I should be using the mid clips, but I find it nice and clean to the end ones, and I tilt it a little bit. So instead of perfectly flat, I angle a little bit, and then you don't even notice that tiny little bit of bone in it. So that's what works for me. What does the different color names mean? For which ones? But yeah, so there's the Blade Glow, which is more, in my mind, I think of it more like the Radeon blues versus the Pros. Like it's going to be more that blue. It's more, in my mind, it's more for adding color pop and more fill light. Where if it was your single light, then I would do the Grow, or do a mix of the two. That's my thoughts on how I'd use them after playing with them both. And not overly relevant, but I did pick up the freshwater one the other day, which would be interesting to try on Refugium and see how it works compared to the Fuge, or the Refuge. But I did get it, and I put it on a vivarium, so completely different. I'm using it for plants, but people in the chat have color-coded names. Oh, that's a good question. I do not know. But, completely off topic, but since it's blade related, I built a second little vivarium, and I picked up the freshwater blade because I want something controllable and put it on there. So we'll see. I have some little tadpoles, and one of them hatched into a little frog who's currently living in here. So once he moves into the bigger vivarium, I'll probably do a video on that one for fun. To do homemade tamales and reef tank equal a good evening. Dang, tamales are delicious. Nicely done. I have no idea on the different color-coded names. I'm curious now, though. What's going on, Macy's daddy? The glow seems a very violet color. Okay, it looks way more violet on camera than it does in person. In person, it is just a blue glow to me. It's probably to do with having my camera as a bit of a warmer spectrum to help cancel out some of the blues. That's my guess on that one. But yeah, in person, it looks very blue, not purple. Now, if you do crank up all the sliders, it does have a slight purple tinge to it. I have these ones running at about 50% on all channels. But yeah, in person, it looks blue, not purple, like it does on the camera glow. So if you're looking at lighting, same thing with corals. The white balance on the camera makes a massive difference. Like I could cycle through it now, and I can turn myself orange, and the tank will still look nice, and I'll look like a Oompa Loompa, or you can change it. Just always trying to find that balance between the two. But 100% white balance related. What's going on, Tyler? Now, if you guys saw it too, the Blade Fuge, or the Refugium one, I think it's called Refugium. That one, because it's IP66, I mounted it to the inside of my sump lid, which I think is super cool. Because it's super clean, there's like next to no light spill now, and it's waterproof, so it seems like a good solution. So far I think that's been working out really well. Than did inspire me to get some more LPS after watching his LPS tank video, so I did add a few I got a gold hammer and a couple new hammers and frog spawns in here now. So kind of stoked for that. I do have a mixture of acros and LPS. I've been debating doing more LPS heavy on this tank, since my other tank is acros heavy, but we'll see. It'll probably end up being a mixed reef because it's really hard to stick to one type of coral. But I am tempted to get a bunch of different gonies and add them into here, so we'll see. It may end up that way. What's going on, JCS Reefing? So yeah, if there's any saltwater related questions you guys have or anything you want me to dig into, let me know. I had a ton of questions on calc last week, so I just did a video last Sunday for Monday's video on kalkwasser. And I just got my nice new 4-pound bag of kalkwasser today. So I'll get that freshened up later. Going to add the glows to my 14-foot run of lights. That's a long tank. Lights, use them as shades to block, plus fill light, 6 XR15 lights. Thinking of 3D printing shades with built-in lights. Could be pretty cool. I haven't showed it off in a video yet, but I actually made custom shades I prototyped on my XR30s in there. Super sleek, super low profile. You don't even notice them, but I made some custom ones that as sleek as I could possibly make it, that kill a ton of the light spill. So that's been working out pretty well. Still waiting for the AI mounts. Yeah, the AI mounts are still coming. They're coming hopefully soon. I do think that the bar ones that you can mount onto like the AI lights would likely also work on the Radeons, and I think that would be a sweet solution to use those. Realistically, 2 of those in the middle would probably be perfect for this, and it'd kill any sag, but I think they'd work well. Why are the blades not available in Canada yet? Have you heard about a date? I honestly haven't looked yet. I'm sure they're coming. I've seen a few places say they've ordered them and they're coming in. Like one of my local guys said he has them on order, so I'm sure they'll be here pretty quick. Did you do a PAR test with the blades and XR15s? I could, but that also depends on how high you're running them and the percentage and all that jazz. So it is relative. I have mine running much lower on this one because it's only 14 inches deep, where my other tank is, I think, 55%. So it really depends. I mean, I can bar test it right now, but we can find out if you really want to know later. What's going on, Darren? Welcome. Ever use Red Sea Reef Energy? I have. That's where you dump it in the tank and it looks like you dumped in some antifreeze for a bit and it's like bright green. I definitely used it for a while. I ran out and haven't used it since. It is amino acid. It can definitely work. So amino acids, that's a fun one to dig into. So amino acids can definitely help with color. Definitely give your corals a little more vibrance. I find if your coral's really dull, it can actually make a fairly big difference. Now that said, it partially depends on what you feed. I find if I'm feeding a lot of frozen like mysis, then I feel like it has a bunch of aminos in it and I feel like there's less of a benefit. But if you're feeding mainly pellets and dry food, then I think dosing aminos can add a fair amount of benefit to your tank. That being said, it probably doesn't hurt regardless, but I think you get more benefit if you are feeding dry foods. What's going on? Oh, how is the tank? The tanks are actually both doing really good. I had a little bit of... it's not an algae, what's it called in this tank? Chrysophytes. I had them in the past. Pain in the butt. I had them, I sucked them out with a water change. All gone. A week or two later, a little bit came back, so I did one more 5 gallon water change, and I see the odd little one in there. So there's like very minuscule. Hopefully they don't actually come back. They were a pain in a long time ago. What's your favorite method of checking phosphates? Well, I wouldn't say I have a favorite. If I'm manually doing it, I would use the HANA checker because it's the easiest one. But my favorite way is I have a Reef bot on both my tanks, and a Reef bot and a Mastertronic, and both of them automate testing phosphate. So I just push a button, and then 20 minutes later I have my result. So that's better than manually testing it. But I'm manually testing it. I prefer the HANA. All other checkers with the color, I find like the shades of blue, like it's hard to judge because they're so subtle on a lot of them. So that's why I like the HANA. Could I blend the color difference between the grow and the glow combo? Yes, you can. They do blend nicely. I've tried that on my tank with the blue and the grow side by side, and they look pretty nice together. So I think it would be a good way to go, and they'll blend nice enough. Like I think you're good there. I see the color difference trying to blend. Yeah, I did show it in one of my videos when I actually did the blade video. I did have them both like single, and side by side, so you can see it. What do you think of Alpha Reef? I have not tried Alpha Reef. I think it's a cool idea. Dosing one thing makes life super duper easy. Because both my tanks are large, I think Alpha Reef would be a little more pricey. But if I do a nano again, I'll 100% try it. I do think it's a really cool way, just super simple. Everything's dosed one solution. So I think it's a good way to go. And definitely a smaller tank, 100% I'd try it. They also have their semi DIY Alpha Reef now, which is like the powder that you could mix. And I'd probably do that method, but I think it'd be cool. Yeah, so when it comes to test kits, for manually testing, I would say alkalinity and phosphate, I like the HANA. Manual testing, usually Red Sea. Calcium, Red Sea. I find the HANA one to be a pain in the butt for calcium, and they're expensive. Like, I find the refills overly priced. But the alkalinity and the phosphate ones, hands down, get little HANA digital testers. You are welcome, Chris. Checking phosphates. Nitrates, that one's always a bit of a pain to test. In the past, I used the Red Sea one. Now, again, I just use the auto testers. If you have the Apex Trident's obviously another awesome solution for it. Yeah, manual elk, I would say the HANA is the best option for that. Yeah, so like, same. I obviously got to calibrate them because they're a little bit off, but on here you see my Trident showing my elk is 8.95 and my Alcatronic shows as 10, so that one's due for a fresh calibration, so we'll see how they are, but it's kind of like it keeps each other honest. If they're too out of whack, I'm like, okay, it's time to calibrate them all and make sure everything's doing good. Have you tried and controlled dosing? Yes, I'm doing that right now. So we'll go into the dosing adventure. So on my tank, I have my calcium reactor, and I'm doing calc, and I'm dosing, and the dosing is the tried and controlled dosing. So you can kind of see on there, I'm dosing 100 mils of elk and about 60 mils, I believe, of calcium, 65 mils of calcium on top of the calcium reactor and the calcwaster reactor. Now, I have been experimenting with calcium hydroxide? Sodium hydroxide. So that as my alkalinity substance. Nasty stuff. Don't play with this unless you're hardcore. Super duper high pH. Disclaimer, if you are going to play with this, it is lye. It is caustic. Wear gloves. Wear glasses. Don't spill it. But more or less, sodium hydroxide, super high pH. So when you dose it, it does help up your pH. The hydroxides help get rid of the carbonic acid in the water, which helps elevate your pH. So I have been dosing it, and I've had a little bit of a pH bump, but it hasn't been a massive pH bump. But my elk has been rising since I swapped to it. So I've been lowering my calcium reactor output a bit to try and balance out my elk, and just leaving the alkalinity dosing at about 100 mils a day. So I'm curious to see if just by adding less CO2 to the tank, if that will balance it out, but I don't know. That's kind of my current experiment with that one. But yes, so my alkalinity is currently controlled from the Trident controlled dosing. And I let that tweak on top of my kind of baseline dosing of the calcium in my elk. What's your favorite dip for pest? Order 19 LPS arriving tomorrow. Not hoping to get any pests. Hopefully no pests. Overall, I like potassium salts. The Polyp Lab potassium salts is the one I find myself using the most lately. Reef primers, what they're called. I find this is very gentle on corals, and it seems to kill the pests. So that's the one I've been using the most. I do have Revive and Coral RX and probably some other ones I can see on the shelf, but this is what I tend to use the most. I have used Bayer. Again, that's more nasty stuff. If you do use that one, you got to rinse stuff really well because it is very harsh on inverts, and I have heard of people that have lost inverts in their tank for not rinsing their corals off well enough. This I just find is really gentle on corals, and it seems to kill the pests, so that's been my go-to the last little while. And there is other certain dips you can use. I've never tried it, but there's stuff like Interceptor. I know Dan was talking about last week, and I know a lot of coral farms use that one as preventative for red bugs and a lot of other little critters. But that's my go-to. Reef the Sea forever. I don't test PO4 anymore. If it's stable, you usually don't have to worry too much. Like, the older your tank is, I mean, the more stable things are, so it kind of depends. Ryan. Just got her. How do you liking the blades? I do like the blades. We talked about this one probably 10 minutes ago. Did they come with any hanging mounts? The long ones do come with a little plastic C-clip. And... one second. So the plastic ones, or the long ones, come with a C-clip that connects to the HMS mount. It does have a little bolt that goes through it. So I think you could very easily turn that into a hanging mount. So it's food for thought. And the shorter ones come with little tank edge mounts. Macy's Daddy, have you tried Tropic Marin A and K plus elements? I'm currently doing the Shine. Been thinking of going Tropic Marin elements and doing ICP monthly and dosing to catch up. I have not. I would like to though, but I have not. I do have a box of the Tropic Marins. I think they're mineral salts. Kind of not quite magnesium, but the other ones, I do have a box of that. I've thought about dosing it. Haven't happened yet, but... do you find the controlled dosing flatlines your elk swings? I do. My swings a day is only 0.1. And you dose also. Okay, so my stuff has been rising, but it has been pretty dang stable. So if I go into my elk, now that I've tweaked it a bit, you can see it's definitely rose quite a bit since I started dosing the sodium hydroxide, but now I got things leveling out. So now it's pretty much flatline. If I go back from the last, the last 24 hours is pretty much a flat line. So I'd say it does. It does a pretty good job. It takes a little bit to tweak it, but it does. Jared, how do you get rid of bubble algae? In the past, I have used the stuff that had bad marketing that people complained about, Vibrant. So I have used Vibrant, and it took about 6 weeks, and it did get rid of all my bubble algae. Apparently it's an algicide, not a bacteria, but it did work to get rid of it. That was many years ago, but definitely did work for it. Emerald crabs are probably one of the natural ways for any tank size. If you have a larger tank, I do hear fox faces do eat it. Haven't personally tried a fox face, but... or just good old manual removal. So Eric, I do dose calc reverse life cycle modified crystal central. I've thought about that back and forth if I just dose it at night versus 24/7. When I was just dosing at night, I had a lot larger elk swings. So back to 24/7, it's just consistent and my elk is super stable. So that's the only thing. But I also have a calcium reactor and the calc and dosing. So I have multiple different systems. So just for simplicity's sakes, if they all do their thing 24/7, it keeps things stable versus back and forth and trying to balance it out. But again, if you don't care about the elk swing, then not an issue. Hannah PO4 reads 0.07, Reef Lads 0.18. That's a decent size difference on that one. Ryan was looking at two 24-inch blades with the mounts for the longest can't find a place order. I don't think the tall mounts are released yet. I was actually looking the other day and I think they said coming soon. I have some, they sent them to me, but I don't think they're actually out to purchase yet, but they should be soon. Sean, if I'm transferring my current tank over to a larger tank, can I transfer everything with new sand? I do appreciate you said use new sand. I would 100% do that. That's all your nasties in the sand. Yes, you can. You'll probably still get a bit of a mini cycle because your sand is a lot of bacteria area. Thankfully, your rock still has tons in it, but you're going to losing that mass amount from your sand. When I've done it in the past, I still have added some bottle bacteria just for good measure to kind of like beef things up a little bit. And yeah, you may have a mini cycle, but you should be fine otherwise. Steven, thoughts on UVB over reef tanks? I'm convinced one could see T5 metal halide results and the new AI blade plus 14% UVB. I don't know if it's required. I mean, I see so many nice tanks with LEDs only, which, they don't have UVB. T5's halides, you get a little bit of it. But honestly, I don't think it's required. Is there a benefit? Maybe. But is it like a night and day difference? I don't think so. There might be a small benefit, but it's hard to say. Think about adding refugium, but the Red Sea divider shattered before I could put it in today. Oh, no. Brandy, I would go to a plastic shop and just get to cut a piece of acrylic for you and just make an acrylic baffle. It'll be an easy fix. Gary, what's your favorite starter acro? Green Slimer is pretty hardy and fairly easy one. I do have... what else did I put in there to starter? Anacropora seem pretty solid, actually. I've put a couple of those in there, and they all seem to be growing very well. Yeah, Green Slimer. We'll go with that for a starter acro. It's hardy. Tech Reefs. Dosing elk at night to keep my pH swing. Should I move to all day long dosing, battling low pH? I have a CO2 scrubber and good surface agitation. I'm still fighting low pH. So here's the funny thing. If you have good surface agitation and your room has really high CO2, you may be adding more of that CO2 into your tank. So that's one consideration. Ideally, if you take a CO2 tester and test your house, your room, you'll get a good idea of like where you're at with it. So that could be slightly counterproductive. CO2 scrubber again is going to help. Calc's going to help. Dosing it just at night will help level out your dips. But again, it might mess with your elk swings a bit, so you might have to play with that. Brandy, personally, I don't think UVB should be added. Yeah, I don't know. I have mixed things on it. I'm sure it's something fun to play with, but I don't think it's, a big benefit. There might be a small benefit. I don't know. It's hard to say. Any tips for getting rid of spaghetti worms? Spaghetti worms are good cleanup crew. I wouldn't even try to get rid of them. I would personally just let them be there. Any solution for vermitid? I heard about the reef snow can be effective. Will it be harmful to my maximum clams? I don't think so. The reef snow one, Mike Paletta talked about on a stream I did with him many moons ago. And the only kind of tried and true one that I know of is just using bumblebee snails, because they do have little tubes and they will kind of, I don't know if they use almost like an acid, but they help dissolve it. So if they eat it, dissolve it, then eat them. But bumblebee snails is tried and true go-to, so I'd look at that one. Or dig in some more stuff from Mike Paletta on the coral snow. Yeah, so Than could be a small benefit to UVB or a bad negative. Yeah, it's true. But the other consideration I have is UVB bad for us? Is it bad for your eyes? You know, is it bad for like skin? Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth doing it. You know, because a lot of these certain UVs, you know, can give people, you can get a tan under your tank and stuff. But, right, is it going to be harsher on your eyes? Like, I don't know. I personally don't know if it's worth. But, you know, I'm curious to see what other people think. I'm not going to be the first one to jump on that boat, but curious to see what other people experience. Told you I look like Luka Doncic. I don't know who that is. I have to Google it. I have not heard that one. I've had some soccer players and some other random ones, but green slimer grow pattern is hard to beat, especially for a mature one. Yeah, no, green slimer is cool. I do have a couple little chunks in there, and I have a ton in my other tank, and it's super bright. It's pretty hardy. It does have, you know, fairly wide growth and tall, and it's a cool one. Taqueries, Tidal Gardens. You guys made me spend so much on camera stuff. Oh, I love it. F2.8 100 mil is expensive. Yeah, cameras are addicting. Lenses are expensive too. Even this freaking live stream lens was a couple $100. It never ends. Cameras are a rabbit hole. Dangerous. Be the fountain. I predict a bad negative, including burning people's eyes out. Yeah, I don't know. That's the more thing. I work. Not even just the corals, but the people around it, right? Do you prefer dosing or calcium reactor? On a smaller system, I prefer dosing. On a large system, I prefer calcium reactor. And this is mainly due to cost. Dosing, small tank, not a big deal. Dosing a big tank, where I'd be dosing, you know, 400 or 500 mils a day, potentially, that can go through a gallon pretty dang quick. And it gets expensive, where a calcium reactor is dirt cheap. Like a bag of media is $30. Refilling my CO2 tank is another $30. There's like $60, and I'm probably good for a year. So super duper cheap compared to dosing a lot of other methods. Easier not can't help to love the green slimer. I agree. I don't care as long as it's pretty and bright. I like it, so it's like it's easy. Yeah, don't worry about the name game corals. Just go for what you like. Whatever you think looks cool, that's what you should go for. That's my theory. Luka's a basketball player in the NBA. Yeah, I googled it actually. I Google imaged him. All right, Chris. I've been in that hobby since 2002. Just got back in. Welcome back to the hobby. Since getting back, when Macna was in Las Vegas. Hey, that was my first Macna. Had a tank crash. Oh, that sucks. Things have really changed in 5 years. Yeah, it really has actually. Like, just the amount of gear that has come out these days is absolutely crazy. You can make a reef tank as simple or as fancy, automated, crazy as you want. Like, you can have any extreme you want in the hobby now, which is pretty crazy. How many gallons do you consider small? That's a good question. Under 100 gallons, I'd say dosing's probably fine. If you're getting, again, this also depends on your coral load, right? The first year or two of a tank, you're probably fine. If you're in like a 150 gallon plus, you know, again, your first year or two could be fine. You could have 1,000 gallons and a few frags and you never have to worry about it, right? But if you have a large tank full of coral, eventually it's going to get really expensive to dose it. And that's kind of my, don't even worry about the tank size. If you feel dosing is getting expensive, then maybe a calcium reactor is a good option. But yeah, like small tanks, to me, a small tank is like 30 or 40 gallons and under. A medium tank could be like 60 to 100. Large tank could be, 100, over 100, like over 90, like a 120 plus. It started to get bigger. It's all in perspective, right? Like, to me, like a 20-gallon tank is still like a nano. And a nano, like, that's one tank. My old Red Sea gallon, 20-gallon, I literally just did like a 5-gallon, like a 1 bucket water change every week or two, and the tank was the happiest tank ever. It's so easy. And that one, like, it'd be pointless to put, calcium reactor on that one. Like, dosing was plenty. Going to go diving at the quarry in the summer. That'd be fun. Avish, using ozone now. Are you using ozone now? If so, how is it implemented? I am using this tank. I do have it. It's not running at the moment though. My water box, my 6-foot peninsula, it is, and it runs 5 hours a night. And yeah, I'm using the ozone tech on, I believe it's setting 3 or 4. And I have a little line that runs upstairs to the tank, and I inject it into my skimmer line. So it's kind of like deed-in, so it gets sucked in through the skimmer. I'm using a NIOS skimmer, which is ozone safe or ozone rated acrylic. And I run it around, I believe it's 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. or 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. So it runs in the night when no one's around, just super low dose. Ozone does have a very short half-life, so it does go away pretty quick. So running when no one's around is pretty dang safe in my opinion. Hope to see y'all at a show this year. Let's go diving. Diving would be awesome. I do love scuba diving. I haven't done it in a couple of years, but it's great. JC, how do you control phosphates? GFSO is so often. Yes, I am using RoaPhos on my water box tank. This tank has very low phosphates. My water box has very high phosphates, and that one I use GFO. And how often? I don't know. I probably changed every like 6 to 8 week range, I'm gonna say. Let's check what the current tests are. I believe I would have done an automated test yesterday, so we'll see where we're at. The water box is currently at dun dun dun. Yeah, 5 days ago was at 0.09 phosphate. Magnesium nitrates 11. Yeah, so my phosphates, they're chronically a little bit high. See if that focuses or not. Reflections. Nope. But anyway, so yeah, 0.09, 0.10. I would like to get it down to half of that would be nice, but basically if it's over 0.1, then I'll usually change my GFO. Tidal Gardens, big fan of ozone, was intimidated to get it, but I'm glad I did. If you have a small tank, don't worry about ozone. If you have a big tank, it does magic for cleaning the water. You can 100% use it on a small tank, but when you have, at least a 4-foot long tank or longer, you'll really notice the difference through that length. When it's a small tank, you probably won't notice a massive difference. Like, just buy a bag of carbon, way cheaper. But on a big system, it's just like supercharging carbon through it. It breaks down all those organics in the water and just makes your water crystal clear. And when you have like a peninsula tank or like a very long tank, you'll really notice that extra clarity through the water, and it can look really cool. So bigger tanks, definitely recommend ozone. Small tanks, I'd honestly just use carbon. Rogue, do you think there's a big difference on running ozone on top of a UV sterilizer for a large system? They'll definitely both add into it. You do get water clarity out of UV. I feel ozone gives you more water clarity. Running them both together, it's hard to say because you're already getting pretty good clarity. I mean, I could try turning one off for a week and then running the other one for a week and see if I see a difference. But they both do similar things. I find ozone's probably a bit more effective, but they'll both provide you that value to an extent. But I would say ozone will give you better clarity than UV will, but they'll both definitely do it. Yeah, so I do have both running, but I haven't directly paid attention. Like, if it's too hot out, I turn my UV off. The ozone's basically always on if the skimmer's on. So, yeah, 3.5 gallons. That's like a pico tank. Less than 5 gallons. If it's like a couple gallons or other, like, let's get in pico territory. Do you recommend biopellets? How do you control your nitrate? Okay. I have not used biopellets, but the one sketchy thing with biopellets is if you have a power outage or something and that water sits in there for a long time, it can get really funky, and you do not want to dose that to your tank. If you have a long power outage, you dump out your ozone reactor before you return that baby back on. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, what I did for nitrates, I used to have really high nitrates in the water box, like 60 or plus. And I used a product called NitroGuard by Orca Labs. Kind of expensive, but it worked very well. There's like these little like crystally chunks. It's probably honestly similar to BioPulse, but it's basically a form of carbon dosing. You put it in there, and I put like a little air bubble underneath it. And over the course of a month or two, it brought it down to like 10, super low. And they've honestly, I think I did 2 different containers. I ran it twice, and they've stayed low. I haven't had to use it. They just stayed low once I finally got them down. So that worked really well for me. And I do like that it was a gradual thing and not a big change. So it just slowly eased the tank down. And yeah, they've been hovering between 10 and 15 now for months and months and months. And I haven't used that product in a long time. So it worked really well for lowering it. Okay. So Avish, why aren't you ozoning in the tank behind you? I wonder if it's too safe to use CO2 scrubbing and circulating scare. I do have CO2 media and ozone on my other tank, so I would say yes, you're safe. And why am I not doing this one? I don't know. I probably will eventually. Maybe I'll turn it on tonight. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, I do have one kicking around for it, so like an older one, so I probably will throw on this one. That would be a pretty good experiment. Run each of them by themselves and see the difference. The hard part is, if you see it like 1 week and you see the next week, like it's hard to compare it. If you had them side by side, it's easier to visually tell it, but I'll try it. I am curious. Gary, do you run your skimmer 24/7? Yes, I do. My pH tanks if my skimmer is not off in my water box, because I think it's just because how many big fish I have in there. There's a lot of mouse breathing out CO2. So running it 24/7 keeps my stuff at a happy level, and without it, my pH is down. So I run mine 24/7. If I had super low nutrients and my pH was fine, I probably would run it less. So I think it depends on your situation, definitely on that one. How do you treat something dinos? So it depends on the type of dinos. There is, I believe there's a PDF in my group by Max Reef, and it shows what to do for the different types of dinos, and that's in the ReefDudes Facebook group. Search for that, because I haven't specifically had that type of dinos, I don't believe, but certain ones respond to UV, certain ones are photosynthetic, some are not, so you gotta see which ones you got to do with that one. So I don't think I specifically fought that one, so, but definitely, if you're in my Facebook group, definitely look that up. Sammy, how do you run GFO for a month on the tank? Either exhaust GFO or keeps pulling PO4 faster. So my return pump tees off into a reactor, and that reactor has its own ball valve. So I just fine tune it and just let slow flow go through it 24/7. If it's dropping your PO4 that fast, slow the flow through it, so there's less contact time and less of your water is going through it, and then it will last longer. It won't be exhausted as quick. So I do it just by controlling how much flow goes through the reactor, and then it kind of prolongs it. And it's probably exhausted at a certain point, and I don't know, I just leave it in there until I change it next time. Thoughts on adding basic coral to a new non-established aquarium? Adding corals compared to fish have been discussed. You can add corals on day one, in my opinion. In the past, I have bought corals that did not fit in my tank. They lived in a 5-gallon bucket for like a month. So I do not think corals do not need a cycled system. Fish do, because they're producing ammonia, which creates all the stuff in your tank. And the whole point of the nitrogen cycle is to break down ammonia. Corals do not necessarily produce ammonium that I'm aware of. If they do, it's extremely tiny amounts and negligible. So you can set up a brand new system and throw coral in it, and it will likely be fine. Now, I'm throwing this in with the caveat that acros and some of the more finicky corals, they may not thrive, but the odds are they're going to survive and be just fine. So now there's also the other thought too, that adding a bunch of corals from other established systems is going to bring in good bacteria and introduce it into the system. So Personally, I think you're fine. I've added corals very fast on some tanks. Or an example, corals living in a 5-gallon bucket with a power ready heater and an XR15 above it. So it's definitely doable. Marcus, just run both and make it look like your fish are floating in there. I do have run both, actually. The secret's to keep the glass clean too, though. Then you're in the money zone of crystal clarity. JC, do you do anything else besides... Do you dose anything else besides standard elk, mag, and calcium? This tank, I dose those 3. In the other tank, I have calcium reactor, calc, alkalinity, calcium, trace elements, iron for the refugium. Plus, I do some of the moonshiner ones on that one. I do it on this one too, but I'm a bit of a slacker. I gotta be more consistent with it. So I do dose a bunch of other trace stuff. On a caveat, I've also been extremely slacking on water changes on these. I don't think I've done a proper water change on my water box in far too long. I really should set my auto water change back up again and just let that do it, because that was the key to success, is being automated. That being said, everything's still happy without doing it for a while. I've done 2 5-gallon ones just to get rid of a bunch of funky algae stuff that was in there. But now on the flip side, I find when you do a big water change, the tank usually looks pretty dang good the next day. Things are vibrant, things look happy. So you should do one more. Babies hasn't happened yet, but need to get back on it. I do think you should do it, and I do think your tank will be happier if you will. How far do you think a Vectra can pull? I want to set an auto water change, but it's maybe 80 feet from the water station. Beer says it can go 100. I find by Vectra, I think you mean Versa, the dosing pump. I find it works better at pushing than it does pulling. I think you could easily push much further than you could pull. So what I've done actually is I put one up at the tank to suck out and push it down, and I put the other one down where my mixing station is to suck up a bit and then push all the way up a story up to the tank. So that's how I'd personally do it. I think the pushing part is way better. Be the Fountain. Jake's Adam said add corals on day 1. Second episode of Reef. Yeah, no, I agree. Corals don't need to have a cycle tank. Now that being said, certain acros will not thrive. They may take ages to settle in. They won't be as happy. However, they should be fine if you set them. What do you use for an auto water change? I have 2 Ecotech Versas, so I have one up, one down below my mix station, which my mixing station's on the first floor of the house, and my tank's on the second floor. So I have just that fishes up to the tank. So that's what I use. There's a point where my bin went empty and I just turned it off for a while and haven't turned it on in ages. So it's been on my to-do list. Thanks for the reminder. Maybe tonight. Is adding new water a water change? Only if you take out old water. Has to go both ways. Be the Fountain. As long as the person understands how to keep parameters stable, corals are good to go. No, agreed. If this is your first tank, probably not the best idea. If it's your 5th tank, you're probably fine. Obviously, you need to keep your alkalinity, calcium, mag, like all your standard issue parameters in happy ranges for the corals. Tracy, I also did the same thing. They said I couldn't give a rat's ass. In my case, I had to do big water changes and probably a couple more. Yeah, it's true. So, yeah. But yeah, water changes are always a good thing. If something's wrong with your tank, water change is probably a good solution. Contaminant dilutes it. If it's because you're lacking something, there's a good chance it's going to add it. So I find every 4 or 5 months, I like to just do a really big one. Like get a 50-gallon drum and just do like a massive one. You're better off probably doing regular ones, but in lieu of free time, that's been my solution the last little while. And back to the dinos question. Ideally, you do need to ID them. Microscope is your friend. Devin, how's the RSM Red Sea Nano doing? Sadly, the Red Sea Nano is no more. That one is long gone. I shut that one down when we moved up here. So I just have the 2 big tanks now. So I have the water box and I have the tank behind me. What type of whiskey we're drinking tonight? This is a pecan one. It's tasty. Yeah, so sadly, no more nano. Maybe one day again, but That's the big ones. I did take most of my rock flowers are in that one are actually spread between these two tanks. So I got a rock flower island in the other one, another one in here. For some unfortunate reason, though, most of the rock flowers are on the back side of the rocks where they're like not very visible, which is quite unfortunate. I do have a 2x2 section in the bottom of my sump, which I have debated turning that into like a massive rock flower tank, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe one day again. Bert, what's your favorite coral? And what is the one you would want? And howdy. Hey, Bert. It is hard. I have different types of different favorites of different types of corals. So for acros, I do love milliporas. I love those furry, shaggy polyps. Absolutely love it. I do like torches. They're finicky though. I would say goniporas I really dig a lot lately too. I have a pretty sweet goni garden growing in my water box, and I have debated just trying to focus on getting a ton of different gonies for this tank and then just having like gonies all over the place, but we'll see. I also love rock flowers. They're super duper easy. They're super colorful. So I don't know. I have different favorites in different realms. It's hard to say. Taylor Smith. I know you answered a similar question. I'm moving a fully stocked 20 gallon to a 90 gallon. How would I go about making the transfer? Don't want to kill my corals. Step by step, please. Okay. If I was going to do that, first question, are you reusing your rock or using new rock? I would, if you're doing a new aquascape, I would pre-set up the new tank and I would try and pre-cycle it as much as possible. I would also move as much of your current rock to the new tank because that's going to bring along the good bacteria with it. But I'm going to assume a 20 gallon to 90, you're probably going to use a bunch of new rock and maybe reuse your current structures or certain rocks within it. So I'd set it up with the new rock, put in some fresh sand. One thing I always like to do too, whenever you're doing a water change, if you have the capability to let them both run, for a month or so, whenever you do a water change in your little tank, dump it to the big tank and use water from your big tank to the little tank. So you're basically changing water between the two tanks and it's going to stabilize them so there's not going to be any shock to anything when you move it in. Now I would also probably dump in a bottle of bottle bacteria just for good measure when you do the transfer. But that should work for the most part if you're moving your current livestock, your current rock over and doing some effort to pre-cycle the new stuff. Ryan, how often do you recommend testing parameters? I would say on average, if you're not trying to dial in something specifically, just standard issue testing, once a week is a very happy place to be. After a while, you might be able to let it go a little bit further, but if you get in the habit of testing weekly, I think you're in a good place. We need a whiskey stream with Shroomy. We'll have to work on that one soon, Randy. Maybe next week. Hobby Dreams, how long should you allow newly mixed salt before doing a water change? So every manufacturer has a different recommendation on that one. Some say use it sooner, some say let it mix for a while. I personally, once your water is clear, there's no more, you can't see any more particles, it's no longer cloudy, you're probably safe. But again, you're probably safe is just going off whatever is recommended in the box. Steve, feel I need to catch up. How are you, Steve? It's been a while, buddy. The rock flower nouns look great. Honestly, that was the easiest tank I've ever had in my life. It so easy, so simple, so much color. That was an awesome tank. I did like that one quite a bit. I sound like the only one joining happy hour. Cheers. Would you recommend rock flowers for beginners? Absolutely. Rock flowers are super duper easy. You don't even have to worry about dosing because they're soft. They don't have a skeleton. They don't calcify. So they're very easy. You can probably do a rock flower tank with just water changes. That's it. Amazing top downs. All those flowers look absolutely incredible. I wanted to do this. I haven't, but I think it'd be cool to do something like the I Am Innovative Marine Lagoon tank, like the 25 gallon one, like a 2 foot by 2 foot. Lots of really good top downs. It's shallow. And make that a wicked rock flower tank. I think that'd be an amazing tank to do. Rogue Aquariums. I'm doing an ICP test tomorrow to find out why I had massive snail die off my mag levels. 1475 is fine. I wouldn't worry about inverts until you're at least 1600. I think less than 1500, I don't think you'd have an issue with inverts. I'd say 1475 is fine. But I am curious to see what your results say. JC, how do I determine how much calc to dose? I got a 120 gallon and bought a dosing pump. JC, it depends. One, are you replacing current dosing, or two, are you supplementing it? The easiest thing is to just dose it for 24 hours, test your tank, see where you're at. No big change, you can up it some more. So with kelp, you can only dose as much as you evaporate, right? Otherwise, you're going to be raising up and dropping your salinity over time. So if your tank evaporates a gallon a day, that's basically your max dose. But honestly, the easiest way, I have an auto tester, so it's really easy for me to tweak stuff because it tests every 12 hours. I'm like, make a change, wait 12 hours, see what happens, and see if it's not much of a change, I'll leave it for a day or two. And, after a day or two, is it trending upwards or trending downwards? And you can tweak your dose up and down. If you don't have an auto tester, manually do that test, but just test every day for a couple days and just see is it staying the same? You're in a happy place. If it's trending down, dose more. If it's trending up, dose less. So that's the easiest way to think about it. Bert, rock flower Gani Millie tank. Sounds awesome. It does. I have been tempted to do it in this tank. We'll see. Maybe it'll happen. I'm also tempted to do more of a Euphilia tank because, I don't know, I like them lately. So we'll see. Have you tried Meta Pits? My corals seem to hate it and just slime. I have tried it. I can't say if I've noticed a big difference. I have a small container of it somewhere. I'll dig it up and I'll try it again. Get back to you on that one there, Sammy. Super 23, any tips on moving coral across the US? Quicker is obviously better. Temperature control, again, is obviously better. I have, ordered rock flowers from Florida and across the states, and they showed up in their cooler in their bag. I've flown from US to Canada with corals. Like, it all depends on the type of corals. But ideally, either heat pack or cool pack, depending on the type of year or the climate. Stable water temperature is a good thing. If you are doing acros, I have seen people put carbon in the bags. That can help too, just to reduce any sliming. But the less time you can take to transfer it is obviously better. How often do you do water changers? Once every 4 months for me. That's probably about my current one. I was doing about 1.5 gallons a day automated. I may go back to that. But yeah, since having a kid, it's probably been one every 4 months. But weekly, that's what I used to do manually. Automated was daily. Now I should go back to automated, but yeah, it's probably for a few months right now. Aren't all BTAs are all bubble tips compatible with each other? I do not know. I've never tried mixing a bunch of different bubble tips. I've had rainbow bubble tips. Those are the only ones I've really had, to be honest. I have had Condi, I've had carpet enemies, but I haven't tried other bubble tips aside from that. I would assume they are, but don't take my word on that. Ham, what's the best bottle bacteria for adding biodiversity, not necessarily for lowering nutrients? Okay, so a couple different answers on this one. If you are cycling a tank off the bat, stick to one bacteria because it is possible for different bacteria to compete with each other. I know like heterotrophic ones can compete with non-heterotrophic ones. There are certain things where they can be fighting for the same thing and be counterproductive. If your tank is established and you just want to mix up the diversity, then I would say variety is probably a good thing, but like space it out. Maybe buy a bottle of Microbacter 7, dump it in, and maybe like a few weeks later get some of those little probios, those little glass vials, and dump those in, and maybe get some Dr. Frizzle and dump it in. You can mix different ones, but I'd space it out a little bit, and then see whatever survive. But just when cycling a tank, though, I'd stick to one brand. Kevin, upgraded to the 200 Microson Red Sea Reef mat on my 150 gallon. Tank water always has a bunch of particles floating around. Previously 100 microns, so I kept my water clean. Oh, that is odd. Is 100% of your water flowing through it or some bypassing it? Yeah, that's an odd one, Kevin. I find it's pretty dang good clarity with the filter rollers. I haven't used the Red Sea one. I've only used the Clear Sea, but it works well. JC, do you run activated carbon? How often? I have not ran it in a long time. If I treat or dose with something that I need to suck out of the water, I would use activated carbon likely. But because I use ozone, it takes care of my clarity and helps break down toxins, so I don't worry about it. So I haven't used carbon in a while, but when I used to use it, I would say probably anywhere from like 4 to 6 weeks is when I would change it. And that was kind of like the GFO carbon thing. Marcus, I've never had any experience with rock flowers. From what I understand, they don't move as much as an enemies. What is your experience? I agree. Once they find a spot, they generally will stay there. That being said, they absolutely can move around if they're not happy, and they will, for sure. Now, that being said, I've had bubble tips stay in the same spot for like a year, and one day just randomly moves and walks over a bunch of your corals. So, there you go, Than. Video idea: in-depth setup of a filter roller. I have done a few Claire C videos in the past, but JCS reefing. Would a kelp stir keep up with higher demand tank than just kelp mix and dosing in a container tank? Demand-wise, I don't think it makes a difference. Actually, there's a caveat here. So, if you pre-mix kelp and you dose it, you basically it's a space thing. If you have space for a 5-gallon bucket and you swap it out every week, that can work. You know, if you have like Than situation, you have a 30 or 50-gallon brood, roll it out every week. That could work too. If you're limited on space, a kelp stir generally has a much smaller footprint, and that can be understand. And you could feed it from your ATO, which can be somewhere else, and that basically allows you to keep a high saturation for a longer period of time. Now, if you premix it, generally, in order to have as much kelp as you would have pre-mixed and saturated through the kelp reactor, it'd take a lot more space and a lot bigger bucket. So kelp stirs keep it saturated for longer and saves you the work of pre-mixing it all the time. So I'm going to say either one, you can only dose as much as you evaporate. Thank you for that, Taylor. Now, the one caveat, I believe you can use vinegar in your kelp, which I mentioned in the video. I did briefly skim some stuff on Randy Holmes about it. I didn't read in depth. I haven't tried it. But supposedly you can get a bit of a higher saturation by using it in combination with your kelp. So if you do that, then you might be able to get a little more bang for your buck. Taylor Smith, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thanks, man. You said exactly how I was planning to transfer my tank. Appreciate the reassurance. Solid plan. Good luck, and thank you for that. Daniel, thank you for the $14.98 super chat. Much appreciated. Eric, adding corals right away, but in a new tank with all the ugly stages and difficulties, the tank and corals will go through 1 year and 2 year, depending on your original. So, okay. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Taylor. So with the uglies, if you pre-cycle your rock, if you use live sand and pre-cycle your rock, you can avoid a lot of it. Same thing, keep your lights off. If you're not adding coral, keep your lights off while you're cycling your tank. Again, that's going to help reduce the uglies. You will generally still get some diatoms. They go away on their own, not a big deal. It's that like brown dusty stuff over everything, but it tends to go after a few weeks, so it's not the end of the world. Did you be the fountain at Eric? Part of the idea of starting corals right away is that the good bacteria is growing on and colonize the surfaces before some of the uglies. You're right. So that is your trade-off. If you're adding corals right away, you need light. Light will promote the good and the bad, and you're just hoping the good wins first. If you're not adding corals right away, keep your lights off, and then you're not going to be growing any algae, which require light. JC, yes, thanks so much. You're welcome. Been debating scooping a kelp stirrer up. Yeah, so I'm a fan of them. I do like them. But if you're, say, on a budget and you got the space, I mean, just mixing up in a big container is a very cheap, easy way to do it. Kevin, my drain is connected directly to the reef mat. Not sure if it's because it's 200 micron. I had paid to have a lower micron filter replacement. I don't think there are any third-party options, so... yeah, I don't know. I think the Clarity was like 20 microns, so that's probably why I don't see that. 200 is bigger, but... yeah, it's hard to say on that one. Daniel, love your channel and all the videos. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Consequences of carbon dosing with vinegar and kelp. Well, given that I've learned that vinegar can increase the potency of kelp, I would try just putting vinegar in the kelp instead of dosing it separately. I have not personally tried to do them together, so I don't know if there's any issues. I don't think there is. I did do... Thanks, Darren. Diaper money. Thanks for the $4.99 super chat, buddy. Yeah, so I've done carbon dosing one time, and I did it with vodka, and it did work well for the nitrates. However, over time, my yellow tank got some orange weird blotchiness on him, which was, I don't know, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. So I quit doing it and they went away. So it was definitely related to the carbon dosing. So I actually haven't done directly since then. The only form of carbon dosing that I've done since then is using the whatever one I said earlier, NitroGuard. And it was a very slow, subtle, gradual way, which I appreciated, right? Because it was over 2 months, a month or two. It took my nitrates from 60 down to 10. So shaved off a ton, and the thing that is still amazing to me is they stayed down. They've never raised back up, and I haven't used their product in ages. So that's where I was at with carbon dosing. Marcus, I was in a hurry, left my lights off a couple of months, and never had a bit of the uglies. Started with dry rock and bare bottom. Yeah, so most of the uglies are photosynthetic. So if no light, you're not really feeding them, and it gives more time for your tank to establish and settle in. So different mentalities. If you're upgrading a tank, I would personally just pre-cycle everything, because then it makes your life super quick and easy, and then move everything in. Brightwell Biofuel is very safe carbon dosing additive. Yeah, so there is a ton of different options. At the end of the day, you're feeding bacteria, which helps consume your nitrates. And Tropic Marine also has some that are more designed to almost feed the corals, which is kind of cool. I don't know if there's a big difference between them, but I did do a really informative live stream with Lou probably like a year or two ago on carbon dosing. So that's actually a really good one. Regardless of which product you're using, it's a really good stream that you guys should watch because it is very informative. And I should bribe him to come on again because that was a good one. Let's see if I can find it for you. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this is the right one. So definitely watch that live stream later with Lou. I'm pretty sure that's the one I'm thinking of. And if not, there's also this one. You got two different Lou options. But yeah, no, oddly, nitrates just hasn't been an issue for me for a while. Phosphates, GFO, I just find easy. I have played with lanthanum chloride a little bit, but I do find it a little bit sketchier. It's cheaper than GFO, so I mean, that's a big plus for it. But the problem with lanthanum, you need to dose it to a really fine filter sock, or like a filter roller, or inside of your skimmer tower. Because as it goes in the water, it binds to the phosphates, and the phosphates could potentially get stuck in fish's gills, like tangs, and I have issues for it, or wrasses. So that's why I'm always more hesitant on using lanthanum. Marcus, bare bottom is super easy, but I have to admit I miss the sand. I do agree. I always go to sand. I just visually I think it looks better. At the end of the day, it's to me reef tanks are pretty. They're aesthetic. They're living room art. You know, they're like this thing. I like the natural look, but for sure, bare bottom is easier. If it's a frag only tank, I'd say for sure bare bottoms. But if it's any form of display, I mean, I'm in the sand camp. Lincoln, is it common to have your calcium levels too high? Well, elk can't keep up while dosing kalkwasser. So the consideration there is alkalinity and calcium are like a scale. If your elk is really high, your calcium will be low. If your calcium is really high, your elk will be low. So you might want to try and correct that balance first, and it's going to make your life easier. So if your calcium levels are super high, you're going to have to dose a ton of elk for it to actually make that difference. Like, just think of it like a teeter-totter. Like, you got balance, one super high, the other one's going to be super low. So that's your consideration. Like, it might just be worth doing a big water change to reset things a bit, and then you can dose things more level. Or manually do a big dose yourself and just kind of correct it. Do you have your tanks plugged into a GFCI or AFCI outlet? I do. All my tanks are plugged into a GFCI. I do think that is a very wise thing, because if anything shorts out or falls in the water or a cord breaks, it's going to kill power to it. Now, some people say that's bad because it can kill power to your tank, but I've definitely had times where something's got splashed, it tripped it, and that saved me or my fish or anyone else from getting shocked. So I'm a big fan. I do think you should put a GFCI on everything. They're like $20, very cheap. It's 3 wires to change an outlet, turn off the breaker, change your outlet, very easy to do. So personally, I'd say yes, do GFCI everywhere. Bert, GFO definitely over Lanthium, but GFO prices needs to come down. I do agree. GFO, I don't know if I feel like it's gone up in price. It is more expensive lately. But I find it safer than using Lanthium. So it's a trade-off. Eric, started Tropic Marine carbon dosing because of your live stream. Been using it for over a year. I say 12 NO3 and 0.11 PO4. Very stable. Nice. Yeah, the cool thing that Tropic Marine has is they have different products based on like high nitrates or low nitrates to kind of cater to what your other parameters are. I don't even know the difference in the product. I should probably watch that live stream again myself, but I think it's kind of cool. Ryan, have you ever used Red Sea AB Plus in any of your tanks? Yes, I have. I actually used it for quite a while in my water box. I ran out and I haven't purchased it again. Maybe I'll pick some up and try it again. But I definitely did used to dose it. I wasn't as terrible. The daily consistency is kind of like when I think about dosing it. But I definitely have used it. Now, with the AB Plus or any amino acid, again, I feel that it depends on what you feed your tank. And I don't worry as much because I feed a lot of frozen food, which I feel has a lot of amino acids in it. But if I was using a pellets in an auto feeder, I would definitely be adding a lot more amino acids. Now, if you have corals that are having issues or struggling, sometimes amino acids can help them recover as well. So, other considerations. Sammy D, I like Phosphate RX, but does clog your carbon reactor. So I dose about midway through the carbon's life, so I don't waste fresh carbon. Good strategy. And I just dose into the skimmer. So, and I have tangs and wrasses. So, yeah, that's another good point. When I did dose Lanthium in the past, I did dose it. I found the easier way. One, you should be using a very fine micron sock if you are doing it. But dosing it into the skimmer is another option because it kind of reacts in the bubble tower and then it gets sucked out into your cup. I find it doesn't get as potent that way, like it doesn't have enough reaction time, but it still works and is a bit safer. So that's probably what I would recommend if you don't have a filter, like a higher micron filter roller, like 5 microns or 20 microns or less. I believe recommended should be less than 5 microns, but less the better. Lincoln is 522 calcium and 9 elk okay. It's okay. Calcium's a bit high. Calcium, I believe I'm going to say 350 to 450 is more the happy range, so 522 is a bit high. I would try and get it under 5, aka don't dose it for a while and let it drop. But I target around 400 to 450 calcium. Elk, anywhere to 8 and 9 I'm usually pretty happy. Magnesium 1350 to 1450 is kind of the range I shoot for, somewhere in there. So that's what I personally do. You're probably fine there, but again, calcium's a little on the high side, so I'd let that drop a bit. Fragging culture, if you're running a calcium reactor, what pH are you running in the chamber? That partially depends on what media you're using. I believe I'm around 6.5 right now, but yeah, so 6.53 is where mine's at right now. Yeah, usually, like, if you're using, like, Carib Sea Arm or Reborn, they do have the recommended ranges. But if you have lesser demand, you can run the pH higher. You'll dissolve less. I used to run around 6.7, but since I need a little more umph of it, I dropped to 6.5. Joe D, I have a high calcium, probably about 600-ish. Whew, that's high. And elk around 10 DKH. What issue would cause high calcium? That's a good question. I don't know how true this is, but supposedly there can be issues with calcification on things if it is too high. I don't know how true this is. I don't know. But, I mean, low calcium can be an issue. Too high, in theory, is an issue. I personally try not to let it go higher than 500. I haven't had it as high as 600, so I don't know. Legitly, is there going to be a direct issue you're going to see? Will it slow growth? I don't know. Maybe. But personally, I would run it less than 5. 6 is definitely high. Now you have high on both parameters, so it's probably kind of balancing out, but I'm not 100% sure what issues it could cause, but from stuff that I've been told and read, it can slow growth or cause issues. And slower growth and calcification is probably what the issue you're going to experience, but again, that's a harder one to validate. What brand elk do you dose? Well, this tank I've been using either Brightwell's elk or Aqua Forest elk. It's about 50-50 in my container right now, so it's a special blend of the two. On the other tank, I am currently experimenting with sodium hydroxide as my alkalinity solution. Nasty stuff. Don't play with that one unless you're hardcore. Use safety equipment. Very high pH, very caustic. But helps elevate your pH a little more. Randy Holmes Farley has a higher pH article, and I think he uses 283 grams per gallon, if I recall. I wrote it on here. Yeah, 203 grams per gallon of sodium hydroxide. So that's what I mix it up to. I'm using Randy's method. Try that one. So, but again, safety, gloves, goggles, all that jazz if you do play with sodium hydroxide. Yeah, too high, not good. Exactly. But what is too high? What is not good? That's the thing. I don't have 100% definition on that one. Check your salt calcium the water change. Slowly. Yeah, I mean, have you used Calc Plus 2 from Bitewell? I sure have. Is there any benefit over standard Calc? So, good question. Calc Plus 2, they do advertise it also has magnesium in it. Now, lots of calcs will have magnesium in it as well. How much is the question? I'm not sure. I know magnesium can be a byproduct of calc, so I don't know if they added it or they're using it as marketing. But dosing it with magnesium in it for sure, it obviously means all your calcium, alk, and mag is getting dosed to your tank, and there may be less reliance on dosing magnesium separately. I did use it for probably a good year or two, and I've also used the BRS one. And it's hard to say if there's like a big massive difference in them. They both work. The BRS Pharma one is the one I'm currently using. But I also used the Brightwell one for over a year. And I mean, for all intensive purposes, the tank seems pretty similar with either one. So I don't know if there's a massive difference. A couple other considerations is with calc is how much time it's exposed to air will reduce its potency. Like if you kind of think of like the soda lime scrubbers to scrub CO2 out of the air. That's basically what calc is. But you're dosing it dissolved stuff to your tank. So whatever calc you use, the fresher it is, the more potent it's going to be. The better sealed, less exposure to the atmosphere, the more potent it's going to be. So there's a lot of different considerations like that. Joe D, I do have slow growth, might be right. Yeah, so personally, I would try and lower that calcium down a bit to, closer to 450, you'd be happier. Alright, guys, what other questions you got? Let me know. Throat super dry. Low mag can cause high calcium. Yeah, that's a fair point. So, actually, low mag is going to mess with most of your parameters. So, kind of before how we talked about like the scale, like super high alkalinity can cause low calcium. Super low alk can be high calcium. They kind of have that teeter-totter effect. And then magnesium is kind of like the referee. So calcium alk do this, and magnesium adjusts the point on the scale. So low magnesium is going to create kind of a larger teeter-totter effect, or if it's higher, it kind of raises the whole teeter-totter up and down. That's kind of how I think about it. It kind of makes sense, but it is kind of like a teeter-totter scale with them all. Eric, how can you get rid of the film on the top of the water? So if you're seeing a film on top of your water, it's generally a protein layer. So proteins build up in the water. They usually go up to the surface. Now, if you have a tank with an overflow, usually your overflow will skim off the top of your water, remove that protein layer. Now, if you have a peninsula tank and all your flow is pushing away from it, it's possible you might only see the protein layer at the far end of the peninsula tank because it's not making it to overflow. I did have that issue at one point in the water box, and I played with my flow. I think one MP60 is 5% higher than the other side, so it causes it to swirl more and make its way to the overflow. Now, if you're using like a standard tank without an overflow, the easiest way to fix it is add surface agitation, and that's just going to break it up so you don't have that film on the surface of your water. So likely the easiest thing for you is just more surface agitation, more flow at the top of the water. I think I'll stop kelp for a week or two. Any suggestions on a good calcium test kit? I use the Red Sea one, the Red Sea starter kit one, that's calcium elf mag. For manual test kits, I thought that was a good blend for everything. I use Apex Trident. Yeah, I forgot Trident. That's a nice, easy tester. Do you think high calcium could cause poor anemone growth and extension? I don't think so. Anemones don't have a skeleton. They're inverts. They're kind of just like jelly, right? So I don't think calcium elk would directly affect it. Maybe pH may or may not affect its happy level. But extension for an anemone is generally down more to a mixture of either lighting or flow, and I think it's likely one of the two of those. Hana calcium is a little sus. I find the Hana calcium to be finicky, and I find the refills to be expensive, so that's not one I tend to use very often. Yeah, not sure I could use it for trends. You got to think, with any tester we use in the hobby, none of them are probably like super crazy, super duper accurate. Using, even if they're off, the trends are what you really care about, right? If your elk is set, 7.5 or 8.5, the odds are your corals will be fine. They're going to go either way. What you care about, is it stable, is it going up, or is it going down? Like, trends are more important than the actual number with most things in this hobby. Tanner also looking for the vast calc reactor. Do you see any benefits by adding the zip ties or the 3D printed blades? Yes, it will make it a bit more potent. The stock stir on the Avast spins at the bottom of the reactor, and you'll see like how clear the water is. So if you're more into like the calc milk type of scenario where you want it more milky, then adding the little 3D printed like little fins that I added or zip ties to it is going to help mix it. Super duper easy way. You'll get 80% of the way there by adding a ton of zip ties to the bottom. It's just going to help agitate it and mix it higher up in the water column. So yes, I would say so. Would you pick calc over dosing if you were dosing small amounts, sub 10 mil? For the most part, it would be easier. Calc gives you higher pH, which if you have low pH, then yes, I would. Because calc is just one thing to dose. It's super duper easy. It can cover everything. Now, I am not a fan of calc in the auto top off. I think that's asking for trouble. But doing calc either out of a bin, pre-mixed with a dosing pump, or through a calc reactor, I think is a great way to go. Proper mag levels is what keeps calcium from precipitation. It's a seesaw effect. Then if you buffer the desired level, that's what I always do as needed. Yeah, if you're ever having weird readings, check your elk and make sure it's in line, because it is kind of like the peacekeeper referee of elk and calcium to an extent. Keith, getting a lot of acro and crusting, not much upward growth. I've heard you can snip. Is it literally that's all you do? Okay. Some corals will take a while before they will start branching out. Some of them take quite a while till they'll baste outwards until they're finally happy and they'll start branching out. Fragging can stimulate growth. 100% can. If you frag something, sometimes you'll see all of a sudden it will start growing. So it definitely can. But again, you want to make sure it's happy first, right? If it's already stressed and you're cutting it, that's not going to help. But if it's basting out, it's happy otherwise, then yeah, try cutting a little chunk off, and just even if you glue it an inch away, it will eventually connect to each other again, right? So, or put it somewhere else in your tank. So if one has an issue, you have your backup colony. Aussie man, in your opinion, if I dose my whole days of app at night, what kind of risk am I taking and doing without a pH meter? Okay, so if you dose everything at nighttime, not in the daytime, you are likely eliminating most of the dip in your pH. However, you're going to have a higher elk swing between day and night. So that's the trade-off there. Brent, can you talk about CO2 scrubbers? I use one, but I go through meter really fast. 1 week for a large BRS one. Yeah, that gets expensive. Can use a motorized ball valve to turn off during the day when the pH is above 8.3. Okay, so yes, you could use a ball valve to turn it off and prolong it that way. Also make sure you're recirculating it, Brent, because if you're pulling room air, it's likely going to be higher CO2 than you're recirculating air through your skimmer. So you do get more life out of recirculating that media. Also moist air through it. You can put a little bit of water in the bottom and just so it's moistened air, and that will also help prolong the life. If you've seen the DI one I did, it sits on top of the skimmer cup, so it's basically forced to suck that moisture directly through it, and that's worked pretty well. Spencer, is there any situation that you would use a dose over a Versa? I have both. I am using dose and Versa. So for dosing it, if you're doing trident controlled dosing, that is a great solution right there. So I do have a dose on there. It is doing the trident controlled dosing. If I was doing anything continuous, I would pick a Versa because the Versa is quieter, much quieter than the dose. The dose is loud at anything continuous. So I would not use a dose for a calcium reactor, a calc reactor, auto water change if it was in my house. If it's remote in your garage or somewhere, who cares? Dose works great for that. If it is somewhere under your tank stand, I find the dose perfectly fine for dosing because it's like, not a big deal. But if it's like the whole time, then it's loud. So that's kind of how I look at the two. But trident controlled dosing has been working really well, and I've been doing that for a while. Dose is perfect for that. So those are your considerations. And the Versa is also much smaller than the dose, so it depends on your space. So I do like them both for their own reasons. Versa standalone, the dose you can only run with an Apex, another consideration. Guy host, are you selling your printed blades for the Calcster? I am not yet. I do plan on it. I got a 3D printer that is clogged and having some issues. I put a deposit on a Persia XL printer like 6 months ago. And eventually I will get this, and then I will actually produce stuff and do it when I have a sweet printer that's not a pain in the butt. But yes, eventually I will. In the meantime, honestly, put a bunch of zip ties on it and you're 80% of the way there. Put a bunch of zip ties, cut it so it's not hitting your little water tube down, and it gets you 80% of the way there of adding the other fins. So that's the quick budget way for now. Is that a new hat? No, this one's older. Our loving friend Ryan made me a bunch of ReefDudes hats a while ago. So Ryan Thompson, if you're watching, appreciate you, buddy. So I got a few different colors. It's fun. The other thing I do potentially plan on making to a product is I have prototyped a pretty sweet Versa light shade that I'm running on my water box tank, and it is very minimalistic, but it cuts out a ton of light spill. And so I went through about 10 different designs and finally got that to be like minimal and is as sleek and perfectly married up as possible. So that might be a future one, but they take far too long to print. So I'm hoping the newer, bigger printer will make it way quicker than I can make them reasonable and not take ages and ages to make each one. So some future potential fun, which if I ever get the new printer. Sammy 31D. After my experience with Mobius, I don't know if I could trust the doser. It is quieter. Reef always talks about constantly needing to replace. Sorry, my throat's super dry. And my glass is empty. Trouble. Okay. So, Versa. All that should be fixed through firmware in the new. I've been like beta testing and stuff with like different firmwares, and the newer firmware I've been using is like heaps better. I really ever have any connectivity issues anymore. So I do think a lot of the connectivity issues will be fixed in the near future. And I do think that will solve a lot of those random tidbits. Now, in the past, originally I had some of the same issues where you basically just power cycle it and then it connects again. Newer firmware, heaps better. Now, aside from that though, the Tubing, I replace the tubing on the one that runs my calcium reactor every 3 or 4 months. I did a similar thing when I used the Kimura. I don't know why, but the CO2 reactor ones that are constantly feeding the tank water through it seem to burn out quicker. The tubing gets more brittle and doesn't work as nicely. The ones I use for calc, which is just running RODI water, the ones I use for dosing, those ones seem to last ages. I have some of my original verses from like 2 years ago. I don't think I've ever replaced the dosing on them, but I'm dosing 5 mil a day through it, not 80 mil a minute through it, like the calcium reactor. So it's getting a lot more wear and tear. So calcium reactor one definitely needs to be replaced more often. The other ones seem to last quite a while and doesn't seem to be an issue. So that's the 2 bits on that one. Justin Woody, what dosing pump would you recommend for a nano reef? 24 gallons. I'm dosing procting 50 mils a day using BRS 3-port. Honestly, you can get away with almost any doser on that one, Justin. Take your pick. Eric, do you have any issues with your Trident dosing lines coming apart? I do not. I have not had actually the Trident has been pretty flawless. I find once your container is almost empty, sometimes your readings are a little off when you're down to like that last like 5-8% of reagent. But aside from that, the Trident's been pretty solid. Greg D just got a Waterbox Frag 105.4. Sweet. Best way to transfer my 40-gallon breeder into the water box. Can I use water? Yes, you can. I would put new water in the new tank and then do some water changes back and forth. So your current tank gets a water change, the new one gets some of the mold tank water. Assume you don't have any pests in your tank, and you should be good to move it in. Alright, my throat is dying and scratchy, and I definitely need something for that. So I think I'm going to call her. But thank you guys for hanging out today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the random Q&A live stream. Rogues Aquarium, Daniel, and Taylor, thank you guys for the super chat. I appreciate it very much. So yeah, if you guys got any other questions or anything you want me to dig into in a future live stream, comment in the comments after this one ends. Otherwise, if you enjoyed it, as always, hit the like button, and I'll